Welcome to Fields of Consciousness, a podcast for consciousness conversations with your host, myself, Jeffrey Stegman.
And I'm Clayton Stedman.
As consciousness explorers and founders of Focus Life Force Energy, we're here to bring a holistic approach to consciousness and share practical examples of how you can take your life to the next level.
In this episode, we discuss biohacking as a way to take control of your environment and your body to optimize your expression and experience in this world. You can biohack in body, mind, and spirit. This is a multi-part episode, and today we focus on the biological or biohacking aspect in the body. Enjoy the episode. Hey Jeff, how you doing?
Doing good, Clayton. Glad to be here.
Today we are discussing biohacking and other emerging ways to elevate our quality of life to a level which we believe is a much larger and richer quality of life than commonly known. The term biohacking has entered the public awareness as a positive practice. Hacking has been a term for the negative practice of breaking into computer systems to cause damage or to extort money. This is still the case, and these positive meanings of hacking are emerging. So let's look at some current definitions that we feel are good ones. So biohacking, as defined by Dave Asprey, he's the founder of Bulletproof Coffee and the Bulletproof brand in general, is, quote, the desire to be the absolute best version of ourselves via a systems thinking approach to our own biology, unquote. So that definition obviously emphasizes our physical health. Biohacking could also be defined as exerting as much control as you can over your own environment and your body to optimize your expression and experience in this world. Hack has come into use to find meaning in our lives on a bigger than just a biological level. And often it is a term that's associated with finding a shortcut or a missing factor to increase our health, performance, or satisfaction in life. So like language, the term biohacking is emerging. So in our work, we talk about something called a critical factor. So biohacking, if you're looking for where you can put the least amount of effort in for the most amount of gain, that's a common kind of framework for the biohacking world. We call that finding the critical factor. And another aspect of biohacking is just making a conscious choice based upon your priorities at the time. So if you have a certain health issue that's not getting in the way too much, but you want to work on weight loss, or you want to work on a particular part of your life because you really enjoy a sport, and getting a certain part of your body in shape. Like it's winter here in Nelson, where the head office is for FLFE, and it's skiing season, and a lot of people have been in the gym working on their legs because they want to go skiing. That may not be the most important thing in the overall health of their life, but well, maybe having more fun is. But they work on their legs. So you see all these people in the gym doing leg workouts for weeks before ski season starts. So this applies to biology or the body. Most of this physical aspect, obviously, this physical focus. We also want to include in our definition the energetic system. That would be the meridians, the chakras, the aura. And then thirdly, or probably secondly, if we go biology or physical, secondly, we would talk about mind and spirit. And we tend to use the term optimization rather than hacking. And so those are some of the ways that we approach this new and quite frankly exciting focus on. I always thought of it, Jeff, as another version of searching for divinity or searching for a high consciousness state. When you're healthy, you're at a higher level of conscious. When you're not, and in the traditions of the East, they talk about enlightenment as the ultimate end, and I just see these terms in the West. Biohacking right now is very popular as another way of relating to that same universal theme that humanity's had as long as there's been humans. I guess it's trying to have the best quality of life possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and since I was young, I really been looking for those ways, to connect to the other side, to my spirituality, and to get stronger and faster, in sports. I used to race mountain bikes, so finding those things that you could take, or on the legal side of things, but that really nourish the body and help you perform the best. And to me, it was always did include the spirit and the mind. The spirit for how to connect to the other side or to a higher power. And we'll talk about some of these hacks like sensory deprivation. It's something I did when I was young, trying to recreate that experience of connecting to the guides and the experience of passing over that people can do with sensory deprivation, float tank kind of things. So for me, it's always been connected, the mind, body, and spirit. And we've been talking through this podcast series of consciousness and fields of consciousness, and we believe that our consciousness, our intentions, and these fields of consciousness that are around us all the time shape our reality. And with the awareness, of these factors, of these things around us affecting us, which does also include the mind and things that are maybe from our past traumas or past experiences as a child affecting us. But then really, taking our will and our focus, with that, and with really applying that, we believe that our creative mind, body, and spirit potential is extraordinary. As Clayton said, much more than we commonly think our potential to be. And whether we know it or not, we bend reality to meet our vision. It might be unconscious, might be conscious. And in the context of biohacking, this could include, having the will, the intention to be the best versions of ourselves and living a long, healthy, and joyful life. So in FLFE and the work that we do in Focused Life Force Energy Company that Clayton and I founded and work in every day, we're well versed in the optimization of the mind, body, and spirit in that environment. And so a high consciousness field is a container for this transformative potential in raising the level of consciousness, or you could call it the potential of the field, whether it's an environment or around a phone or an object, like we do with our technology. We believe expands what is available to manifest in the field, that there's just more potential there. We would quite literally have more energy. In fact, often, exponentially more energy available to us to create from in fields that are resonating at these higher levels of consciousness or higher octaves of consciousness. So we believe that the highest form of self-optimization includes the mind, the body, and the spirit for an integrated result. And though we may have separate concepts for the mind, body, and spirit, they are deeply interconnected. For example, as I mentioned before, trauma has compromised the mind, or something that's happened in our childhood that has us be a really tough inner critic of ourselves. So we're, constantly second guessing ourselves. We're upset with ourselves. We're, never maybe grateful for what we have, but we're instead, always looking to get better in some way. We believe this takes a toll on both the body and spirit. And there's plenty of research out there about, being in a cortisol state or a high stress state, which we can do with our minds. We can put ourselves in a high stress state. It really doesn't have to be anything external happening for that to occur, that the body is affected negatively by that. So that the FLFE high consciousness environment supports all of our systems to uplift together in harmony or coherence. So energy flows to the lower functioning bodily areas, following Chinese medicine and having more chi, prana, or life force energy available in these high consciousness fields, and lower resonating parts of our consciousness are supported to rise. So, kind of in this soup of higher levels of vibration, the lower vibration things tend to rise. And at the same time, the mind quiets, and its ability to connect to a higher power is supported. And this is why we see FLFE having such a bolstering, healing effect on the mind, body, and spirit. We had a webinar last night, and a woman, Mary, came on and talked to us about her life. And she's at 66 years old, in the best shape in her life. And she spoke about physically, her body had turned around a cardiac condition, and she was just feeling physically the best she had in her life. And spiritually, she had moved into working with people that are close to passing over, people that are in that last stage of life is a new job. So it was really quite interesting to see that. So as an overall field of consciousness, physical body, spiritual connection all uplifts, then we can expand the potential for us of our personal reality, what's around us, that we, as we kind of move up the tree, we can see further, and we can expand what's possible for us. And I think that's something we're all looking for, to expand our own expression, what we can create and be in the world, and the collective contribution that we can make. So this is a large topic. There's going to be, it's a multi-part episode covering, these large topics of mind, body, and spirit. And in this episode, we'll be covering the biology, or the body aspect of biohacking and the work that we do with FLFE.
Yeah, so let's talk about what we see out there in the world of self-optimization or biohacking. So optimizing the body is perhaps the most recognizable of hacks, and what is termed biohacking, of course, most often refers to. The great thing about our body is that if we change something in our lifestyle, it shows up pretty quickly in our physical body. So there's a nice quick feedback loop there.
Mm-hmm.
So optimizing the body can include optimizing our genetic and epigenetic expressions. The field of epigenetics is fascinating. It means stewarding the health and wellness of our organs, muscles, bones, tissues, hormonal and immune systems, and all the other aspects that run our physical vessel. Exercise, food, nutrition are good starting points. which we do talk about as a support to the FLFE community. We actually talk quite a bit about a field that we feel that we recognize as emerging, which is consciousness nutrition. And part of that is related to the supplements and minerals that can support us to rise in consciousness, and we'll cover that in detail in just a few minutes. And again, we're looking for that critical factor in consciousness nutrition to raise the level of consciousness of the body. So where can we put the least amount of effort in and get the most amount of gain? Mm-hmm. Optimizing your nutrition and micronutrition means you're providing the body with the building blocks it needs to function and repair itself. So different areas of physical biohacking, supplements and minerals. Well, this is where we talk about consciousness nutrition. Mm-hmm. In doing research on the body and trying to support higher levels of consciousness, especially in a high consciousness field, we came to the conclusion that the nervous system was the critical factor for most of humanity. Mm-hmm. And then we looked at what was the critical factor in the nervous system, and it was the myelin sheath. So then we did research on what feeds the myelin sheath, and it came down to magnesium and essential fatty acids. And then we looked at the ratio of those and the dosage of those. And so, and then there's actually a synergy. So if you take the essential fatty acids and magnesium within 30 minutes of each other, they work better than if you don't. And we find that the EFA ratio to magnesium ratio 4:1 is about the best, but the optimal ratio. And in terms of dosing, typically when you start taking magnesium supplementation, if you take more and more of it, you'll get to a point where your stool or your bowels get really loose. And so that is where we'll usually start to back off. So if you start with, say, 4,000 milligrams of essential fatty acids, get a cold fish source. If you're vegan, you can go with a flaxseed source. Mm-hmm. And you can keep increasing the dose until you feel it's uncomfortable in terms of your bowel movements. Interestingly enough, as we did thousands and thousands of dosages of this on ourselves and kind of our inner circle, we came to these conclusions. And then one of our friends, one of the inner circle people, mentioned a gentleman named Charles Poliquin. Now, Charles Poliquin was the number one trainer of Olympic athletes in Canada. Mm-hmm. And his conclusions were that the nervous system was the critical factor, if you will, not so much in raising consciousness, but in increasing physical performance. So it's a body's ability to transmit electricity around itself. And in, of course, the spiritual traditions, it's really about the nervous system carrying light to support a higher level of consciousness, and they just happen to both line up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, Clayton. And his research, at some point, the muscle size and strength became not as important as the nerve capacity to feed that muscle, the impulses it needs to do its job. So that really is such a great parallel to having the capacity of the nervous system support a higher level of consciousness through its capacity. And we should also mention the forms of magnesium that for absorbability. We have in the FLFE.net website under tools, supplements for consciousness support, we have a number of different magnesiums and different formulations. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Clayton? You're well versed on what absorbs well.
Yes, there's different people that are focusing on either selling a single magnesium supplement like magnesium biglycinate or magnesium threonate. Threonate is typically the most absorbable form, but I think these general rules have to be kind of carefully examined because each body is unique, and we use muscle testing to verify a lot of the level of appropriateness of a supplementation. And then there are people out there like Dr. Todd Olvakadis, who owns the company Gematria, and that's in our website. And he's formulated a kind of a multi-spectrum, I think it's called, magnesium. There's various types, so you're more likely to get what you need from a multi-spectrum one, unless you're a really good tester and you can say, okay, this particular one is really good, and that's what I need now. And I mean, we often shift about every 3 months, Jeff, like change up the product. If we're taking, like we use AOR it's got a really high standard. Gematria's got a really high standard. There's a company called True Roots. So if you find these really high-end brands, even those, if you switch them up about every 3 months or every bottle, you get a fairly large bottle, if it's 3 or 4 months, even 6, but just to switch them up once in a while, because the body seems to like the process of adaptation to a different type of supplement.
Yeah, and using kinesiology to measure the appropriateness of a supplement or food, it is really interesting to me that something I eat a lot, get in a habit of eating something or taking a particular type of vitamin, that over time it does get lower in appropriateness for me. That, the body's like, come on, let's switch it up, move to something else. So that it's a general principle, I believe, of kind of rotating, and maybe it's, similar to some of the weightlifting techniques of, switching and constantly re-challenging the body in a different way.
Yeah, that fits in with the anti-fragile perspective on things, is that we're best when, to a degree, when we're adapting. We don't want to have too much stress, but doing the same thing every day in the same way, and eating the same food, it doesn't appear to be the way that we're designed to be at our best. And when you talk about supplements and minerals and biohacking, I mean, vitamin D, especially in the winter here in Canada and other places, there's obviously parts of the US that are probably almost as north or as far north as Canada. For all practical purposes, there's not many people live up there anyway. When you get into these low light times of year, you need to make an extra effort to supplement with vitamin D. It's not as good as being out in the light, but it does help if you do it. And then zinc is another big immune system booster, and immunity it's always important, especially in this day and age with the pandemic going on.
Yeah, I've found even in the summer, unless even when I'm out in the sun a lot, part of it depends on where you are in relation to the equator, but also how much skin you're able to get in the sun. I mean, if we're out with our clothes on, we're really not getting much vitamin D, even if it's we're hiking out in the sun. It's just on our necks and arms maybe. So I find that using kinesiology, I need to take it pretty much all year long, vitamin D to keep it up. But I do make an effort to get in the sun and reset in the morning, particularly in the sun. It's good for the system, but also to generate as much naturally as I can.
Yeah, I know so I lived in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada for about 20 years, and the Coastal Health Authority there started recommending 10,000 IUs of vitamin D a day in the winter. And they found it was so positive for the residents of old age homes that the province just bought that supplement for them because, or they provided it through their own nutritional program, because it reduced the illness by such a large amount. It was a huge return. So, if you're in Arizona, it might be 1,000 IUs a day. So you really have to figure out where you are and what your lifestyle is.
The other discovery we made for health and rising in consciousness, so both the physical body and the I guess you could say the spiritual or consciousness ascension, is amino acid blends. So that was something we just wasn't on our radar, though we were, it was testing high appropriateness for us to eat a lot of protein. But the amino acid blends were, a really efficient way to get those amino acids into our system. And it seems to really support functioning in particular while we're rising in consciousness, and while we're in high consciousness fields, and really just in general for repair and optimization.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the soil or what it is, but I just don't know if foods have as much amino acids as they used to. I know magnesium is pretty well studied in that regard, but I'm not sure. We just sort of discovered this amino acid idea maybe 3 to 6 months ago. And we're just starting to try to find ways to measure how a high consciousness field may kind of use more amino acids, because there is, when you're in a high consciousness field, the body naturally has more resources, it has more energy to do the repairs that it needs and optimize itself. And anytime you have increased regenerative activity, you're going to need more amino acids. So that makes sense. It's just trying to find out, because research in a high consciousness field has really not been a focus of many people. There's not a lot of data out there, so we have to do research. And when we're researching the research, we have to look at their variables and controls and see how that applies to a high consciousness field. So that's on our research list.
Well, it's certainly something bodybuilders have found, and elite athletes, that are using amino acids to support, muscle growth and stamina. So it's definitely out there in the physical world for health and well-being. But yeah, for really it helps me personally with functioning, and especially after exercise. When I supplement with amino acids after exercise, it really helps me have more energy into the rest of the day.
Yeah, I think there's been a few people that we've been talking to this about, and all the ones that I know who've taken it regularly, they're finding that it's another level of quality of life or energy. And for those of you who are maybe not familiar with functioning, so we talk a lot about level of consciousness in our work, and we refer a lot to the Dr. David Hawkins map of consciousness. And then we made another distinction called level of functioning. So level of consciousness is sort of your being, and level of functioning is your ability to take action. Our mission is to create the optimal conditions for the evolution of consciousness in an economized society. And the economized society part is where most of us, we have to get up and go to work. So functioning is pretty important. Otherwise, you don't get paid. So that's just a term that we use. And I'm just reminding myself, Jeff, that we're so used to talking in our own kind of vernacular, our own specialized language, that if it's your first time listening to us, we don't want to leave you out of the conversation by not explaining what we're talking about. So water, you can't talk much about biohacking without water and hydration. If our research is correct, and we know it's pretty accurate, we figure about 80% of the people on the planet are dehydrated. When you're looking at hydration, the number that keeps coming up is half your body weight in ounces of hydrating liquid a day. Water is obviously the most common one. If you drink a cup of coffee, that's 2 cups of water to rehydrate after that. And coming into the holiday season here, so more time eating all those carbohydrates. You got to pay attention to the water, otherwise you start to get kind of clogged up, and then you want more coffee to, get the adrenaline running, and then that's kind of a vicious circle.
It may be a big part of, what people consider a hangover, feeling bad in the morning after, alcohol and not much water is dehydration. And I know when I'm dehydrated just from from a busy, physical activity, and maybe being so busy that I haven't gotten to drink as much as normal. And then sleeping and we all wake up with a deficit of water after a night's sleep. And man, that can just feel so groggy and out of it. And once I get a good, liter or 2 liters of water in me with some salt or other electrolytes, and it's just a completely different world.
Yeah, my life works way better if the first thing I do is I get up in the morning and I get a liter and a half, maybe 2 liters, but not really. I get that much into me right away. Maybe make some herbal tea or something. It's odd when I'm dehydrated. I just don't tend to like the taste of water, but when I get hydrated, I love the taste of water. So that's a paradox. I think it has something to do with the thirst receptors, and there's a reset we recommend once in a while. If you've been dehydrated for a while, just drink 75% of your body weight one day, or maybe a little bit more or less. And once you get to a certain level of hydration, it kind of resets your thirst receptors, and you seem to crave what's good for you versus craving stimulation. And certainly I have lots of anecdotal evidence for that, but I just don't I don't think I understand how it really works, but it definitely works.
That's interesting. So you take a day and really load up on water that day, of course, with the appropriate electrolytes.
Yeah.
And reset I noticed that the other day I was a little bit dehydrated in the morning, and it was hard. I had a hard time getting the water down. It didn't taste great, but by mid morning the water tasted awesome, and I just kept going. And I got it way up. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't understand why that works that way, but maybe we'll be able to figure that out in the next little bit. If we focus on it, we can find some good research and measure the level of truth of that. And yeah.
So we'll be getting more into water in other episodes, and it's such an important part of life, and we really can't go long without water. So what about the quality of water? I know that's important. We talk about for FLFE subscribers, people in the community, to drink a good source of water, not tap water if you can, like a spring water that has natural minerals in it, but really avoiding the fluoride and the other things in the water that might be in a municipal water supply, like chlorine.
Yeah, I mean, the municipality, or the whatever your language is in your jurisdiction, their job is to get the water to your tap that's not full of giardia and cryptosporidium and anything else that might cause a GI issue or even poisoning to different degrees. And then it's our job from there to filter it or purchase water that's really good for drinking. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously alkalinity is a big topic in today's society. There's different ways to measure surface tension and the absorbability of water. It's really not going to be the focus of our conversation today. That's weeks worth of podcast just in itself. But Dr. Emoto's work is really interesting to see the potential of water with a certain thought associated with it expressed in a visual form is really kind of life-changing. If you haven't seen that, I got an opportunity to actually see Dr. Emoto speak when I lived in Vancouver, British Columbia. And I bought the book, and it was like a coffee table book in our place for a long time. It was just very interesting to see thought forms expressed in crystalline water structure. Mm-hmm. We did a study of the FLFE field with Dr. Emoto's son. Dr. Emoto's passed over, and the crystal came back partway between the standardized water crystal forms, which there are many. Ours came back halfway between sort of truth and love. And you can go on our website and look at that study, and you can certainly find lots of images of Dr. Emoto's work online, or you can buy some of the books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a breakthrough in my awareness to know that water has thoughts, that it has a field of consciousness associated with it or in it. I don't know, intersleeved with it. I don't know how to best put it, but that by ingesting that water, that those thought forms are coming in. It's we've purchased a system that takes the memory out of water.
Mm-hmm.
The 999 hexahedron company that's the product companies in Canada, which spins the water in a way that takes the memory out of the water. And I know, Clayton, when you and I were traveling one time, we had to buy some water, some your typical bottled water. When we tested it, it was really low in appropriateness, or it wasn't, great. And we blessed it. We basically put our intentions onto the water for the water to rise in appropriateness for us, and just kind of focus the energies, our personal energy, on the water. And lo and behold, the appropriateness of the water came up. So there is the ability to change water in many ways. There's sort of the traditional, acid versus alkalinity and filtration and microstructuring, but the thought forms are also affect us that are in water.
Yeah, I mean, if you live in a large metropolitan area and your water source is coming from outside the city through the city, it's picking up all the energy from the city. And, some of that can be very well be positive, and some of it may not be something you want to have to manage in your body. Your body is extraordinary, and it will manage all those things. And if you have more energy freed up from drinking good water, then your body can use that in the way that it knows how to optimize your life. I really noticed when we were traveling recently that when I was in a hotel with chlorinated water, my whole day was just dull. And it reminded me that, most of the research we've done talks about the effect of liver on the liver of chlorine in the water. And so if you can get the chlorine out of your water as well, that's going to help your liver, and your liver is, responsible for so many metabolic functions in the body. If it has more energy, everything's just going to work better. So if you're showering in chlorinated water for a long time and you change that only, then my experience with everybody that's done that, hundreds of people, that their energy increases for the positive.
Yeah, that was a shock to me, that how much that chlorine enters our skin through a shower. I've always been very careful about what I drink, but what I shower in now, that I learned from you, Clayton, that can really affect your liver. That chlorine just enters your skin and goes right into your bloodstream, and then your liver's got to work extra hard to get it out. So these whole water treatment systems to take the chlorine out, or shower head, adapters that you can put on that have a filter that take chlorine out, are useful to do.
Yeah, they're a good investment. We got the same house system, I think, as you, Jeff, to take the memory out, and then we actually got a double chlorine filter on as an option, just to get as much out as you can. Didn't really cost that much more in the kind of the context of the whole system, but you seem to become more sensitive to chlorine over time if it's not really in your system. I don't know if you've ever seen the experiment where they have a glass of water that's chlorinated, and they put a drop in it that shows the chlorine is there, and then they have another glass of water and they put what's chlorinated, and they put your finger in, and then they pull your finger out. You put the drops in to show the chlorine, and there's hardly any chlorine in there because it's absorbed into your body. That's how I learned about the power of chlorine. It's like that was pretty hard to deny. Your body just sucks it right out of the water. It's pretty hard to deny that one.
Yeah, the skin is such an organ of, input for the body. I mean, and we put lots of, sunscreens and all sorts of things on our body that, what those chemicals are coming right in.
Mm-hmm.
So it is something to look at as a way to, control your environment as best you can, what's coming into your body. And it is easy to overlook and I've overlooked in the past, my skin as one of those ways things come in.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, we use a supplement that we put these drops on our arms, Jeff, and rub them together. That's how they get absorbed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Drops of life.
Yeah. Well, let's go on to sensory deprivation. This is probably something you have a little more background in than me, Jeff, although we did get some new blinds in our place, as I was talking about this morning. Got these super blackout blinds. There's actually a channel on each side of the window frame and a channel on the bottom on the sill. The blinds come down within the channels, and that is blackout blinds at a whole new level. And there's another quality of sleep when it's that dark in the room. Yeah. So it's a form of sensory deprivation, as you're drifting off and waking up in the morning. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to, help over time.
You just need to put a float tank in your bedroom so you can do some journeying in the totally black room. We'll talk a little more about light, but that would be cool. You should try that. The sensory deprivation that I'm familiar with was, the float tanks that became popular in the 60s and 70s, where you're totally your senses are gone and you're floating in the saltwater solution, so you're not really touching anything as well. And people use that for going inward more deeply, for connecting, to a higher power, to their guides, and I had tried that as a young man, rather unsuccessfully, since I didn't have the equipment. But more recently, watching the movie Superhuman on Netflix, Invisible Made Visible, that whole idea of the blindfold perception, where they're training children and adults, with their sight completely covered by these big, thick blinds, and training them to see, to perceive without using their eyes. And in that movie, there was a woman who was losing her sight, and so she used this method to read, even though her sight was nearly gone. And these children, and I know several people who are doing that training of people. A friend of mine in South Africa, and it's amazing. I mean, these kids are able to sort balls of different colors, to run a obstacle course, put the ball in a basket, all without seeing with their eyes. So that's a whole nother, way to access our abilities that, is kind of outside of the mainstream understanding, but it's kind of part of that. We're extraordinary in what we can do. And so that sensory deprivation of the eyes is really is an interesting thing. I'd like to try to take that course, and maybe I could, read my notes for the webinar with a blindfold on during one of these episodes. So
yeah. It's, maybe we can get blindfolded up and see if we can find our dinner. That's a motivation.
Well, you mentioned light and sleeping, and that's a big topic there, and it's something that shows up in the biohacking community, as a way to really optimize sleep and the circadian rhythms and the production of melatonin. I know you turned me on to some blue light blocking glasses that I wear at night.
Yeah, we did a lot of research on the influence of particularly the blue light spectrum on sleep, hormonal balance, and consciousness in general. And there's a gentleman named Dr. Richard Hansler, and I think he's a doctor. I'm not sure about that, but he has research published on lowbluelights.com, and he is one of the preeminent researchers in the world on the effect of blue light toxicity, as they call it. And with an amount of screen time that most of us spend in our lives, especially in the last couple of years, we're on smartphones late at night, and those LED screens, they're sending, a spectrum of white light is blue, and they're sending it into the eyes, and the eyes have a way of interpreting blue light as daytime, and so all the hormones and all the bodily functions are activated when you're looking at a LED screen as though it is daytime. And because melatonin is the most potent antioxidant the body produces, and your body typically needs 3 to 4 hours of melatonin producing low light conditions to sleep optimally. We believe it's one of the biggest contributors to the lack of quality of sleep that most people get. I've gotten out of the habit of wearing I wear my blue light blocker glasses probably 3 nights a week. And I've cracked my pair, so they're all kind of taped up with duct tape because they're fit overs, right? And I look like a great kind of an alien bug-eyed monster walking around the house with them on. So I got to work on my style a little bit, but I really noticed the difference in my sleep. And most of the time, if I'm having dinner with some friends or something, I'd be looking like that. It's just awkward because I wear glasses most of the time. And I just want to encourage people that I've seen lives turn around just from wearing blue light blocker glasses for 3 or 4 hours in the evening. And I noticed it the first night I wore them. A lot of things I don't respond to, but that one was, very dramatic.
Yeah, Dr. Jack Kruse's work has been inspirational for me there too. In fact, there's a great interview. Luke Story interviewed Dr. Jack Kruse on Luke Story's podcast. And part of that's getting out in the sun in the morning and, resetting the body in direct sunlight. It's an important part of the story too, as well as soon as it gets dark outside, really cutting out those blue light spectrums. And, the screen's one thing, but it's also the household lights too. And
yes.
So I've replaced some of ours with, yellow lights.
Those yellow lights, yeah.
So those go on in the bedroom, and the glasses go on for the rest of the house. But that's a really important piece, and something that many people in this biohacking community are learning is really important for sleep, and how important sleep is, and the production of melatonin for the antioxidant effect and the rebuilding in the body and immune system. I know there's studies that say there's a direct correlation between your immune system strength and the amount of sleep that you're getting.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned I call it the circadian rhythm reset. My optimal morning routine is, I'm up, I got 1.5 liters water in me, liter, maybe 2 liters. And then I'm outside and spending 10 or 15 minutes looking up into the sky, not the direct sun, but in the morning light as it's, where I may be up when the sun is already up, but I'm looking into the sky away from the sun and just getting some of that light in my eyes in the morning. And it does, when I'm on top of my routine like that, it's another level of quality of life as well. And sometimes you have to experience things to appreciate them, and then get out of the habit and go back to it, and then it's like, wow, this is really worth doing. Yeah.
And the sun has such a wide breadth of frequent, of different frequencies, different wavelengths of light that are coming, that have many benefits. And I know Dr. Jack Cruz was saying in that interview, in the morning, just get as much of your body exposed to the sun as possible. He must have a yard where he could do it naked, because that's what he says he does. But so it's not just your eyes; it's also your skin, even in those early mornings. So the other thing that I've recently learned, and I went to a couple of biohacking conferences, which were really interesting, is the red light wavelengths, which of course are in the sun, and these can be really helpful. So I've bought some red lights, and I've been experimenting with those. And there's a lot of research on that, but there's particular wavelengths that work really well. The red light, the 660 nanometers, there's kind of a range around that. And the near infrared around 850 nanometers wavelength, and there's range around that. And there's good mitochondrial support and inflammation reduction and skin health and blood flow, that the research has come out on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so light, both in its visible and invisible to our eyes, is in different wavelengths. So the wavelength, so light is moving in a waveform, and those wavelengths are kind of the peak to peak distance in those waves. And when you talk about like a red light wavelength of 660 nanometers, that's the distance of that kind of peak to peak or trough to trough in the wavelength. And some of the wavelengths, particularly the higher ones, like the near infrared 850, penetrates further into the skin. So just like a bass, the sound, a low bass sound carries so much further. Like if you hear music, from the next, neighborhood over, you kind of hear that bass, you hear the drums and the bass line. You don't hear the high frequencies. Those are higher wavelengths, and the bass is lower, and it tends to go further and penetrate further into the body. So the lower wavelengths may just warm your skin or penetrate a little bit into your skin, and the higher ones, they're the optimal ones that are beneficial, can penetrate further into your organs and have beneficial effects there.
Yeah, interesting. Well, this whole world of biohacking, we're going to talk about one more, maybe two more things, and then we're going to just go down a list of other topics you can look into, because this world is a big world, and we're just, we're going to talk about the mental in our next episode, and then the spiritual. And those ones probably aren't as studied, because the emphasis of biohacking has been on really physical optimization. So I guess we've got sound, Jeff. Sound, these are the major ones. There's many different kinds of sound therapy, guided meditations. Many of us find that waves lapping on a shore of a lake or an ocean, sound of water running, seems to be the natural sounds have a calming effect. I'm sure there's good research out there around it. I just don't happen to know any references for you, but some of that stuff's just self-evident. Guided meditations will very often use sound, probably 99% of them. There's a few that are just visual. And there's sound healing through vocalization. There's tuning forks. There's a whole world of DNA activation associated with tuning forks that we just haven't looked into very much. Chanting is a long known aspect of devotional life. Kirtans, and Jeff, you got some personal experience that with Audrey, who's a chanter. kirtan person.
Yeah, it seems with that kind of chanting, there's such a history there. Thousands of years of chanting those, like in some cases, the Sanskrit chants. Of course, there's many forms of this around the world, but and it appears that there's a field, there's an activation of a consciousness field when those are chanted. And so while the sound is also affecting us, the field that's associated with it, I believe, is also has the effect of these blissful states, these connections to higher power, to divinity in some ways, the feeling of connection to all that is. Yeah, sound's one of my favorites.
Yeah, we have some high consciousness music that we're going to start selling next year. We've got a special field on a particular artist music, Audrey's music, and we're going to start selling that. So I think there's a 700 field on the music. I think it was recorded in 850 zone, but it was 700 field. So I certainly enjoy it in my car when I'm driving. Seems to keep me in the right headspace and out of the being preoccupied with how other people are driving headspace.
So we could talk about a few other subjects. There are frequency devices, and we do need to be clear that FLFE is not a frequency system. We're activating a high consciousness field. It's really a different technology. I have a beamer mat that I use for increasing circulation, particularly microcirculation. Really good for recovering from injuries. And then there's just a whole host of other pulsed EMFs out there. And of course, people that are sensitive to EMFs need to be careful about these things. And, if you're considering one of these devices, you really want to try it yourself first. And, companies like Amp Coil, who make almost a combination of sound and pulsed frequency, they always recommend that people try it, not just once, but several times to really see how it interacts with their system. But these, we tend to think of EMFs as not being positive. And as we've talked about in other podcasts, there's positive EMFs, and some of these devices are examples of that, where it's, working with the frequencies in the body to help us balance and heal. So those can be really interesting. And the beamer just kind of pulses in your entire musculature around your micro, arteries and veins, and your large arteries and veins kind of pulse, and it helps to move the blood in a way that you don't always get when you're just at a resting state.
Yeah, we just bought a Skinar, Jeff, and we talked about that. So Cheryl and my wife ended up breaking her arm not too long ago, and she's been going to a Chinese doctor, and he was using a Skinar, and she was just in awe of it. And I've heard lots of good things about it, and just never really got around to buying one. And so we ordered one last week, and I think you can use it for all kinds of other things. I haven't used one, but from what I've read, and I know people like our friend Katrine down in Sedona, she's always, she's raved about the Skinar for years, and I probably should have bought one years ago. But looking forward to playing with that. That's another, probably we call a frequency device. I think it optimizes the electrical transmission of energy through the body, and then it kind of then it adds energy to it as well. I think it helps in both ways. So that's something that you might want to look into if you haven't tried that.
I'm holding myself back from searching and buying one while we're talking right now. It's been really interesting exploring all these different modalities, and what's what's really great and something we've talked about and with our FLFE community is how well the FLFE technology works with all of these different modalities. That, when you're in the high consciousness field with more energy available and the other benefits we've talked about, some of these other things work even better, or they work, just as well, and maybe in a different aspect. So, yeah, that's interesting. I'll look into that one, Clayton. So exercise is one of my things that I've used for a long time to change my state, to keep my energy high, to repair and optimize myself. And, that's just been that middle of the day hour of exercise a day has really made a huge difference for me. And that's a huge topic on its own. And I know right before we got on today, I jumped on the rebounder, the little mini trampoline, and I know it's something you've used for years. Clayton.
Oh yeah, decades. We have 2 Cellercisers in the office. They're a brand of rebounder, the best one we found. I think David Hall is probably the authority on rebounding in the world at this time. I would say that's pretty safe to say. Certainly the one that I'm aware of. And we have 2 in our home as well. We have one upstairs and one downstairs. And 2 minutes on the rebounder can change your state. Not always, but it certainly can. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's, I was reading an article on rebounding once, and they said that's why the reason that cowboys were so tough was because they were going up and down on the horse all day, and it's being like on a rebounder. So every organ, every gland in the body is getting exercise when you work against gravity. So it's gentle, and everything gets help. So you spend 8 hours on it. Well, if you don't have a rebounder and you spend half an hour on a rebounder, you are going to know it. If you're even a little tiny health bounce, like you'll be surprised. So spending 8 hours on a horse, I mean, yeah.
And the rebounder is relatively inexpensive. It's something, almost everybody can do. So it's a great tool.
Great tool.
Yeah. No, we haven't done any research yet about what does a rebound session do for your level of consciousness. That might be something to look into. At some of these recent biohacking events I've been to, I've tried the hyperbaric chambers, the oxygen therapy, higher than atmospheric pressure of oxygen. And I found those quite interesting. A bit, expensive and bulky to have in a home. But if you have a provider locally, it's something to try, and it can really help with healing certain conditions to get more oxygen into your tissues.
Yeah, when I've done hyperbaric chambers, I've only done a couple sessions. I find my hands get tingly, and that's it. Yeah, there's probably lots of other stuff going on that I'm not aware of, but that's the physical effect.
Mm-hmm. So I always remember the going to the hot springs near Nelson and jumping in the cold plunge, which is when I think you're in the hot spring, it's nice and warm, and it's all this mineral water with all these great minerals, including lithium, so you're good and relaxed. And you jump in that cold plunge, and the body just instantly, goes into a whole different mode of, awareness.
Yeah.
And so that cold thermogenesis is another thing that you see in this biohacking world, where people are using the cold as a tool for, really, I think it's back to the anti-fragile.
Mm-hmm.
It's acclimating to, these low temperatures to really shock the body into healing and recovery mode.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have heard about Wim Hof over the last few years, and he's probably the poster child for cold thermogenesis. And I've studied a little bit of. He doesn't seem to have an academic approach. He has a more kind of social proof approach, I guess. I'm thinking of social proof of, has a lot of media where he's in large tubs of ice water, barrels to going on the television and, getting into these plexiglass containers full of ice. He's been diving underneath lakes, obviously, that are, covered in ice. And I think he walked up part of Everest. I'm trying to remember how far he got. I think it's 12,000 feet, but I just can't remember. He did that in
just in his shorts, right?
Shorts, bare feet, shirt, like. So, he's great to watch like that. It's really, we actually have a couple clubs in Nelson. I don't know if they're clubs, but they go down to Lakeside Park here, and at the end, we have a 400-foot deep glacier-fed lake that's 65 miles long, and Nelson lives on a river coming out of that. So it's classic Canadiana in that way. And this time of year, it starts to get into that really sweet spot for cold thermogenesis. And in terms of temperature, so there's a group of people that used to go down 5 a.m. in the morning, and then another group at 7. And I seen a group down there on the weekend. It wasn't at 5 or 7, but I think there's just a group of people that got into it. And we've got a couple people in the office. Don in particular, he started doing cold showers, and it's the people that I've seen do it. It changes their skin for sure. That's what you see on the outside. Mm-hmm. But Jack Cruz is, I think, the person that I found whose research on cold thermogenesis is the most interesting. Mm-hmm. And if you want to see people do extreme cold thermogenesis, the events, then Wim Hof seems to be the guy. So that's not really my world. There might be other people who are.
If you want to watch videos rather than doing it yourself.
Yes, yeah, of course.
So EMF mitigation is another subject, and Luke Story is a blogger that has a podcast in this biohacking world who was very concerned about that. He's very sensitive to EMFs, what we call consciousness lowering EMFs, or those that really affect the nature of the environment. And he found us. We've interviewed with him a number of times. He's been on our service for some time now. And he's an interesting one in that area. Shungite is one of the top things that we've found to harmonize EMFs. And I've also built Faraday cages and done other things. And I know Luke's talked about papering his bedroom with conductive paper and grounding it to reduce the incoming EMFs.
Yes, to give an example of EMFs and high consciousness fields, we did a study with the Institute of Magnetic Science out of Petaluma, California, and they had a Faraday cage, which was a several inch thick steel cage, and with no electronic devices in it, except for 4 random number generators. And we were able to make the random number generators less random. There's 4 of them in the room. So that's an example of how a high consciousness field technology can transcend traditional Faraday cages to create a supportive environment. So when you're talking about EMF mitigation, you may want to look into the positive influence of Faraday cages for some people. Some people really respond to that.
So, it's not something that I've seen in the biohacking, but certainly the flow of life force energy, chi, prana. I mean, we've been talking about that from the FLFE environment where there's just more of that available and the body picks it up. And part of our service has the supporting the unblocking of that flow. So the flow of chi through the body. So, acupressure, acupuncture, is another, I think Chinese medicine way to optimize the flow of energy through your body. And I know you get acupuncture once in a while, Clayton, and even chiropractic work to free up, physical blockages like bones in the wrong place. or pinched nerves or pinched areas of the body can also help with that flow of chi or prana through the body.
Yeah, I found the last couple of times, I guess it's because I'm not as I'm more aligned recently, that when the chiropractor is doing adjustments, there's no I go to a traditional type who oftentimes you'll hear a pop when something's adjusted. And even though there's no pop or cracking sound, the kinesiology test he does before and after shows that there is an increase in strength in the body. And he relates it to partially to proprioception. Mm-hmm. And so that is another field that is fascinating. There's almost the same benefit if there's no kind of physical sound or noticeable adjustment, because you reorient the body's proprioception of itself in space. And that's something I've been going to chiropractors for a long time, and it's only the last 6 months when I've really noticed just the benefit of still going even though there's no adjustment. And that's proven through the kinesiology test of strength and weakness of a muscle group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and speaking of kinesiology and kind of preparation for that, are these energetic optimization exercises, which, it kind of fits into what you're saying, is part of optimizing the flow of energy through our bodies, and that Jerry Teplitz and his switched on living, using these exercises to really change your state and your strength and your abilities. I know you did some research on that. It's PACE, is that right?
Yeah, PACE is an acronym for a series of alignment exercises in the energetic optimization world. We just happen to know Jerry's work. It's well researched, well vetted, and he's a solid guy. He's been doing that for a long time. But that's if you haven't looked into PACE or Jerry Teplitz, I would look into that one.
Well, the list is huge here. Yeah. Just on physical, the body portion of the biohacking, and we'll be going more deeply into mind and spirit as really important aspects of ourselves in this world. And with these different modalities, there's a lot of fancy things here. There's a lot of expensive things. And you can also just go outside barefoot and ground out in the earth and get a benefit from that. Certainly like the things you can do that are low cost, and the little trampolines fall in that category, and grounding yourself is another one.
So at the end of our podcast, we'd like to suggest that people take action. So one thing I learned in the coaching industry, and I've been in it since 1995, is that when you take action on something you learned in a coaching session, or if you're sitting in a seminar, you take action on something you learned, or you listen to a podcast, or YouTube video, or read a good book. If you take action on something you've learned, it helps integrate the learning. And so the opportunity for us is to take action on what we've discussed today. And there's lots of things to do here. We haven't really got into the world of aromatherapy. We haven't talked about the many types of body work, from, Rolfing, Feldenkrais. There's just so many types of body work. So you can do an experiment that works for you. It's always interesting to consider what the critical factor is in your life, where you can get the most amount of gain for the least amount of effort. Some of these cost a little bit of money, some cost a lot, some cost nothing. So spending money isn't always necessary, or isn't always even the best answer to improve the quality of our life. So you consider what you think will work for you, and try it for a week or 2 weeks. And you can journal, track your progress, and get a look at how that's going to influence the life you're experiencing today and the one you're going to be creating in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so some of the low-cost things you could do for the next 2 weeks could be grounding every day, getting out in the sun in the morning, maybe blue lights at night, blue light blocking at night if you get a pair of glasses, mini trampoline every day. The FLFE free trial, there's no cost for 2 weeks there. You can try that and try a high consciousness field as something to change your environment, see what happens with your body. And, we're really glad to have you with us on this fascinating subject. There's a lot here, and we're really looking forward to getting into the mind with you. There's really a lot there as well, and it's not as well covered in this biohacking world, and also into the spirit. So please join us next time for that.
Thanks for joining this episode of Fields of Consciousness, a podcast of consciousness conversations. We invite you to visit the link below the episode to experience a completely free trial of focused life force energy for 15 days.
If you like, you can subscribe to the Fields of Consciousness podcast, and please tune in next time. We release new episodes every other week on Tuesdays at 11:11 a.m. PST. Onward and upward.